G'day everyone, sorry about that. Welcome to our final wrap edition for 2021 of the Weekend Wrap. Lots to talk about tonight.
G'day everyone.
So without any further ado, let's kick it off, shall we?
Final wrap edition
for 2021 of the Weekend Wrap. Lots to talk about tonight.
G'day everyone.
So without any further ado, let's kick it off, shall we?
Final wrap edition
for 2021 of the Weekend Wrap. Lots to talk about tonight.
G'day everyone.
So without any further ado, let's kick it off, shall we?
Final wrap edition
for 2021 of the Weekend Wrap. Lots to talk about tonight.
G'day everyone.
So without any further ado, let's kick it off. Well. G'day everyone. Welcome to our final 2021 edition of the Weekend Wrap. Brought to you, of course, by CrowCast. Lots to go on about. Lots to
G'day
talk
everyone.
about.
Welcome to
And
our final
for some reason, I've got some
Weekend Wrap.
brought to you, of course, bloody feedback. I don't know what's going on there, but anyway. I know why, because I've got this silly thing going. It's all right. All right, so without any further ado, and to get me out of a hole, Peter, Macca, how you going?
Well, I presume Pete's good. I'm not so good. I've had a bit of a frame with the leg with the axle and a got a pin of a trolley piercing and then ripping upwards, and so it's about a 12-week injury, something like that. So we'll box on, mate.
Not good, Macca, not good. Sorry to hear that, of course, and hopefully that mends quickly, although it sounds bloody nasty if you ask me. Peter, how are
It
you?
is.
Well, thanks, Payne and Macca. I'm sure all of the CrowCast community wish you well, and we certainly hope that you recover well, and hopefully that tonight talking a bit of footy will bring you a bit of joy after having had a difficult couple of weeks. So all the best, mate.
Thank you for that, Pete. I was looking forward to tonight to be a little bit stupid on here instead of just being stupid at home.
Look, welcome
No
to
problem.
everyone.
And I should say thank
Sorry,
you to Macca and Fiend for inviting me into your Sunday wrap territory. Not a territory I'm familiar with, but happy to be here.
That's all right, mate. We'll
Well-
kick you out if you don't follow the rules.
Well, I never do.
Look, thanks to everyone who's joined us on Discord and YouTube, of course. You can get around the live chat on both platforms. And if you want to have something to say, of course, get into our Discord channel, get to the live studio and stick your hand up. And we'll be happy to get people on board tonight to have their say about the Crows' final selections in the 2021 AFL draft, and also the pre-season draft, and also the rookie draft. So a bit to go through tonight. And I guess as a bit of a starter, I'll start with you, Macca, as the Sunday night regular. What did you think of the overall outcome for the Crows this year?
Actually, I'm glad you worded it that way, sorry, Fiend, because that's how you do have to look at it. It's just not any one of those individual draft in isolation. It's the combination of both the trading and the drafting, because if you trade well, you generally thin on the drafting side. And I just think that to get in a bloke the calibre of Dawson, who was third in Sydney's best and fairest, and I'm sure he's going to give our best and fairest a nudge, because I see every game this boy's played and he's a star. And then that left us with starting off with 4 and 33, and which obviously was going to be 6. And, to end up with 4 players, I'm very, very pleased with the fact that we did that. That spread your opportunities. I thought Rochelle was the obvious pick, not the one we would have liked. We would have liked Callahan, but we couldn't get him. and then the other three boys, they've each got their own talents, and one of them's going to crack it. Two of them's going to crack it. Maybe the whole three. Who knows? But there will be a footballer amongst those. And my only criticism of the whole thing would have been the retaking of Davis, but then I think there's a bit more than that meets the eye, and we'll just leave it at that. So my take on the whole thing that, well, some of the scribes have given Adelaide an A, and I'm pretty close to giving him. I'll give him an A minus.
Peter, what's your thoughts, mate?
I take the view that once the draft happens and those boys become Crows players, that's it. Anything that I've said beforehand just goes down the toilet, and I'm absolutely all in for all of those boys because they're ours, and we just desperately want them to succeed. So generally, look, overall, I'm like Macca. Really, I'm pretty happy because if you take it in its totality. Particularly with the, we're always in front with the Dawson trade because, really in the end, he didn't cost us a lot if you actually analyse the figures. So to bring in a 192 centimetre sort of wing outside, mid-type player, I think it's easy to forget that we've brought him in once we got to the draft period, and the fact that he'll probably play up the field. That was certainly his understanding once he was interviewed when he came to us anyway. It was his understanding that he was going to be playing further up the field, not necessarily cross half back. So I think that's great. Rochelle Fiend, we talked about at length. Would it have been my pick? No. But with that said, there are guys that are watching these kids, professionally, and so if they think that is the best pick, then well and good. And we'll certainly be behind Josh, and hopefully he can bring to us some of the traits that talking about, the media talk about. I was actually just getting part. I mean, we talked a lot about Josh, didn't we? Because we knew he was coming. Talking a little bit more about the three kids that we picked up. I actually really, really like the Zach Taylor pick at 44. I don't know if you've seen his highlights and some of the vision. He looks a really, really impressive player.
Bit of a bargain, Peter.
Yeah, I'm really happy, and I couldn't give a shit about his height. The way that he moves through traffic, that kid, and his agility and his foot skills, I just think, I mean, we always say it, don't we? After every draft, we always sit here and say, "Oh, how did he slip through to, or can't believe we got him at, But I really believe that with him because on all the mocks, he was in, he was sort of in around about that sort of 2025 kind of area. So I think, I feel happy that we got him. Soligo, look, we didn't know much about him, did we? And but obviously they did. I mean, Toomey had him at 30 in his mock draft, and so definitely, he's not an unknown. He's not a complete sort of bolter.
Yep.
And in fact, we got him a little bit later than what Toomey predicted. But again, he's a kid. I look at his vision. I think, I think I messaged you guys on Friday. I said he just looks like an animal. Looks like, and when I say that, I mean that with no disrespect to him personally, but he just looks like an animal at the contest, and he just looks like just a kid that is just a natural midfielder. And so we talked a lot about the fact that we were short in the midfield, and okay, these are 180 centimetre kids, but I do feel like with Taylor and Soligo that we got some real grunt in that midfield. But then, don't forget we got Dawson at 192, and then don't forget we picked up Nankervis at 190 as that project big midfielder.
Yeah, that's
so. I think overall we sort of balanced out pretty well.
Actually, a couple of comments you made there, Pete, I really, really like. And because Zach Taylor, I had him marked as the steal of the draft, actually. Because as you said, you watch the way he moves, he's ambidextrous, and looks very natural doing it. He's got class about him. He'll have to obviously adjust to the pace of AFL footy, but he will. I'm pretty sure. I'm very, very keen on him. Your comments about Soligo, well, probably a fair word because it looks like how he plays. And Nankervis is a little bit more on the project side. But tell you what, he's got strong hands, very good hands, and he's also, for a guy his size, he moves around very well as well. So, yeah, as I said, there's definitely a footballer turn amongst them, and it comes back to how hard they work, and it comes to the luck of us not getting injured and all that sort of stuff. But I think the club's done a very good job in who they've taken.
How about you, Fiend? How did you feel about it all?
Well, probably my first reaction was, gee, 3 more pipsqueaks. Which was probably a view shared by many, and probably lacking any sort of analytical intelligence, really. I would have liked another bigger body at the top end. There's various ways that we could have gone. I felt that there was scope that we might have been able to split the pick and get some value there. But having said that, the deals obviously weren't there for Hamish and the recruiting crew to be able to split that pick. So if we take that assumption as read, that they weren't able to manufacture something to give them an extra pick at the top end, then I think it was really a fait accompli that we took Josh Rochelle at the top.
Yep.
And he's obviously got plenty of talent and X factor and vibe about him, and it's going to be very interesting to see how he slots in to the group, and how quickly he can get up to AFL speed, because there's no doubt that he can be potentially a very damaging player for us. Saligo wasn't on my radar at all, so that was a little bit of a surprise, particularly given who was around. I have a feeling that we may have taken Roberts if he was still there.
Absolutely no doubt in my mind. I just posted there, Shane. Did you see the footage? Did you see he had mates there?
Yeah, they're all in Crows Guernseys.
No,
I think
he was absolutely.
Yeah.
He was a lot for the Crows at 35. There's no doubt in my mind. And then we had all that hoo-ha when Sydney bloody jumped in and grabbed him. So yeah,
Sydney just got a little bit of their own back for Geordie Dawson. And took Matty Roberts, and when they were interviewing Matty, and they said, "Oh, you're looking forward to moving up to Sydney," there was a little pause, a little hesitation.
Because he knew he was around about a minute and a half from going to his the club that he loves. So yeah, it's disappointing to him, but.
Yeah, I would. Yeah. I mean, disappointing from one point of view, but fantastic that he got picked, and he's up on in a good team and a good system, Sydney, and we're well known for poaching Sydney players, so we'll just keep the powder dry.
One of those little weird things, how clubs sort of just go in little patterns, and it's really interesting that how many St. Peter's old scholars are sitting up in Sydney at the moment. There's 4 St. Peter's players on their list at the moment, as well as Tom Harley. So
who are they, Pete?
So you've got Will Hayward.
Yep.
You've got Dylan Stevens.
Yep.
You've got Matty Roberts now, and you've got Malaki Carruthers on the rookie list up there. So you've got 4 players from St. Peter's sitting on the playing list, and then of course you've got Tom Harley, who's the football manager up there. He's a Saints old scholar as well. So. It's interesting, isn't it, how, I know that Hamish loves a Calder Cannon player, for instance, and it's interesting how they sort of go back to wells that they kind of like.
Yeah.
And Sydney, it's interesting, 4 players from the one school. It's unusual, isn't it?
That's got to be Harley's influence, surely, you would think.
Yeah.
Look, so
quite possible.
In the absence of Matty Roberts, as my microphone just goes flying, Saligo looks a good, solid player. Inside, very much so, a ball getter, a ball winner, which is good. I don't have a lot to say about him, simply because I really didn't pay much attention to him. I didn't ever mention him in dispatches for us. Zach Taylor, I agree with you, Mac, and Pete as well. I think he's an absolute steal at the pick. He looks to have some good class. He's left and right sided. It will probably take a little bit of time just to get up to get up to AFL development, I think, but looks a really good player on paper, and the short highlights, and we'll go through them a bit more depth individually, and of course Nankervis, who we took in the pre-season draft as opposed to the rookie draft. Haggis mentioned in one of his interviews that they got a sniff that.
Essendon.
Were someone at least were looking to take him in the rookie draft, so we utilised the pre-season draft, which changes our list profile just a touch from 35 to 36 on the senior list. I guess the question that I have, and we can talk about this now, I guess, Benny Davis got re-rookied, which you would think wouldn't have happened had we not taken Nankervis in the pre-season draft. Thoughts?
I just think there's just a little bit more to it than just taking him back. I think I don't really want to say.
I know where you're going, Macca, and look, I'll jump in, and Fiend and Macca, you'll know that for many years I've been a big fan of Ben Davis. I really like, and I actually just like him as a footballer, and I just don't think that he has been used as well as he could be. And if you want to look at his career, I just don't think he's been given the opportunities and he's just had a little bit of bad luck. He had his game one, he was monster down in Geelong when we were absolutely slaughtered. Game two, I thought was a decent game against the Swans in 2020, and then COVID hits, and suddenly, so he's just had a bit of bad luck.
Yeah.
The games that he came back, I thought he looked really good, actually. And it all started a Sandford game against Sturt when he was absolutely putrid for a half against Sturt at Unley Oval, and they threw him back, and he just absolutely took the game by the balls and played some really, really good football in the Sandford and continued to do so, and then played in the AFL, and I thought looked really good. Macca, I know that the line that you're on, and I'm kind of on a similar line, but a little bit different, because I think there's a lot of cultural issues at play with Ben, and I think that it's more, rather than what you're alluding to, I think it's more just the fact that he is very, very popular. He's very, very respected, and I think that when you're looking at a club with a really young list, and it will only be younger in terms of the SNFL team in particular, I think Ben. I know a lot of people say, "Well, why don't you just give him a development role off the field?" Well, it's just not the same. It's not the same as being in rooms.
No. Well, and he'd still want to play anyway, wouldn't he?
He'd still want to play, and so I think that he gives a lot of leadership. I think he gives a lot of good stuff in terms of bringing the young kids on, and just generally, I think with a young group, he's just some real glue down there, and so I think that there are, from that point of view, I think that's where it's a really positive thing. And I look, I'm happy to be the one that is different to everybody, and I was thrilled to bits to see him get back on the list, because I genuinely believe there's an AFL player there. I really do.
I don't. I really don't believe there is an AFL player there. Look, he's couple of games in defence, he did okay, and that's all I'll say. He did okay.
Well, hang on a minute, Mac. You say that he did okay, but if you look at those, hang on. Well, okay, but that's like 90% of defenders. That's the game. So, I put to you in those games that he played in defence, given that in some of them he had limited minutes, coming in as a medical sub. What exactly did he do wrong in those games?
It's as simple as this. He's been there 5 years.
The question was a simple one, mate. So the question was a simple one. What exactly did he do wrong in those games that he played in defence at the back end of this season?
Nothing majorly wrong.
No, don't qualify it. Did he do anything wrong? Did he turn the ball over? No. Did his man get off the chain? No. Did he miss targets? No. Did he lack run from halfback? No. Did he actually do anything wrong?
I can only answer it this way because you are forcing me to answer only your way. Because your way
I'm asking a
limits any.
question. I'm asking a question without qualification.
He did nothing majorly wrong.
Did he do anything
But
wrong minorly?
yeah, there were a couple of loose incidents where he did make a mistake. But that's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
The average player does not get 5 years and to have a fill-in, and he was only a fill-in because of injury, get a couple of games like that. And you know as well as I do that he will not be a regular this year with all the number of players who've got competing for spots.
Well, and that's a fair call. But I would say that not many players have had an injury / pandemic interrupted career as he has. I think it's a little bit simplistic to say and I don't want to spend too much time on this because he's number whatever on our list now. But not many players have had the interruptions that Ben has, and I think most reasonable people who follow the Crows would agree that Ben Davis has been mismanaged, failed to get opportunities ahead of blokes like Tom Lynch when his form warranted them, got hung out to dry, as Pete said, in a couple of games where we were getting smashed in graveyard venues. Look, will he be a regular 22, first 22? Probably not. But every team has players that are not first 22 players. I think what Ben Davis offers us, apart from the cultural side, which I agree with, is also a bona fide mid-size defender who has shown that he can be reliable. And I don't think that's a bad thing to have on our list, particularly when we have so much inexperience on our list at the moment.
I don't want to pillory the lad because it's not his fault that he gets picked in the rookie list. That's not his fault. But I'm just saying that in normal circumstances, I don't believe he would have, and that's all I'm going to say. No more.
Given that we took Nankervis in the preseason draft, so he goes straight on the senior list, what would you have done with that rookie slot, Mac? Would you have taken another untried player?
I would have, and that's for example, I don't know whether there are any, and I haven't studied all the players that weren't taken. But
sure, no, it's not a loaded question. It's an open question.
Yeah, it's an open question, and there are two types of player I would have been gambling on, and I see it as a gamble that when you're down in the rookie list like that, and that's where we've actually played some gambles and come up trumps with them.
Yeah,
I'd be looking for a young ruckman to put in there to spend the next 3 or 4 years and develop into a ruckman, or I would have been looking for a tall mid in the rough that might develop into a good one. So, tall one. And so, either one of those two, because I think we're just loaded with all the other positions.
Yeah. Pete, any last words on Ben Davis?
No, I've said my piece.
Okay. Good points, Macca. I'm a bit of a fan of Ben as well. I think you could have gone either way with that pick. I'm probably not disappointed that they re-rookied him, but I would have been just as happy if they'd have done what you said and taken on a project player. You are right, we are a little bit light on in the ruck stocks. Not sure who might have been around that might have fit the bill and been worth a rookie spot, but anyway, that's the way the cookie crumbles. Let's look at each of these players in a bit more detail, shall we? Because there's quite a bit to like about a lot of these players, and we'll start off with Mr. Rochelle, shall we? First question, he's a confident lad. Do either of you feel like he is going to be around in round one?
Good chance. I think he's a really good chance. The 3 S's apply to him: speed, skill, and swagger. He is good. He's good, and he believes he's good. I think that goes a long, long way to being successful, actually.
Yep.
He's just got that aura about him that we don't normally have. Others who really know, they think he's going to be an A grader. I think he's going to be an A grader. And we just, we relied on Eddie in the forward pocket, but to have a forward that can roam around with a bit of class, take a good mark, even if he is 5'11", beautiful mover. I just think he's going to be playing right from game one, and I think he's going to develop into a very classy forward for us. And the one thing I do like about it is the fact he looked absolutely delighted to come to the Adelaide Football Club.
Pete?
Yeah, I agree, Macca. I'm happy that he certainly seemed happy to come to us. His family, they look pretty well adjusted in terms of him. The fact that he's been at boarding school, they're used to him being away. I think that in fact, actually, because of the whole soccer thing, they're probably grateful that he's not actually moved to Europe, to be honest. So probably Adelaide is a pretty small thing for them. So there wasn't that whole thing of mum crying and that whole thing. So I think they're a well-adjusted family. I think that he's so in terms of coming to Adelaide, I think that's great. I diverge from you a little bit. I'm not sure that he'll necessarily be ready round one. So, I mean, Sam Berry obviously the exception, but I'm just a little bit concerned about development over there in Victoria. Then the fact they haven't played a lot of games, that whole thing.
That's relevant. Yep.
How their match fitness will actually be, and I don't say that in terms of any criticism of Josh, and I make no observation in terms of his playing ability, which seems to be very well suited to what we need, and he seems to be a very talented kid. And so I'm not making that kind of judgment, but just in terms of his actual fitness and his ability to be able to run out games, and so I guess we'll see in the pre-season. But I mean, look, you look at a kid like Sam Berry. He came over. He won pre-season. Bang! He pretty much played the whole year, and he'd come off of a fairly restricted, COVID season over there. So it is possible. So we'll just, I guess, it's a little bit of wait to see on Josh. I think, Fane.
Yeah, I'd probably go along with that. I feel like he's got all the attributes to hit the ground running in round one. Physically, he doesn't look underdeveloped. He's certainly confident. So, I think a bit is going to hinge on how quickly he gets up to speed during pre-season and how he goes. I'm sure he'll get a run in a couple of pre-season games. I see him initially as playing the Lockie Murphy role, being a bit of a talent upgrade on Lockie Murphy. No disrespect to Lockie, but I think on the surface, Josh looks to have a few more tricks and might offer us a little bit as a sort of a high half forward running back into the 50. But we've got a few players, and this is where it gets difficult, doesn't it? Because we've seen Braden Cook play a bit of a role similar to that up forward. We've got a couple of other youngsters up forward. We've got the incumbents, of course, Jimmy Rowe, there, who'll be looking to cement his spot and will benefit from another pre-season. So there's no telling how he will come up this year, because there's no doubt in my mind that James Rowe's got the talent. I think my question with James Rowe has been his goal-kicking radar at AFL level. It certainly doesn't seem to. He seems to have been forced to play a lot higher at AFL level, either through design or how games have panned out. But as a consequence, we've missed his or anyone's goal sneak sort of qualities at the square, if you like. So there's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of traffic for Josh to get through to cement himself in the ones.
And don't forget, they'll be. I mean, these kids coming in, they'll be running in smack bang into a Burgess pre-season.
Yeah.
So obviously they'll have their own tailored programs, but it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be easy for them.
No, and as we've gone on now, 2 seasons impacted by COVID. I don't care what anyone says. Uh, we talked about it last year with the Victorian kids, um, and I think it might have been a reason why Sam Berry was held back a little bit from midfield minutes, because I think they were worried about his ability to run out games playing midfield time. But these lads, these Victorian boys, have got 2 interrupted seasons now of development. And I don't think you lose your talent, but you certainly lose your fitness base.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
those, and for that reason alone, I think that the lads that we've picked this year, all being Victorian boys, are going to struggle.
I think the one on my research, the one maybe a chance is actually Saligo, because he's the one with the engine. Out of all of those boys, he's the one with the really big engine.
Yeah. Mac?
Yeah. I was just going to say, you're very, very good with your description of our forward line there, Fane. And what Rowe was, if you watch how he played at West Torrens, he was hanging around in the goals up to half forward, and that made him very dangerous around goals. But for some reason, playing for us, I think he spent over 50 to 60% of his time on ground hanging up closer up to the centre wing. And which meant that, and I think he is our best crummer, or at least he tries all the time. The one that could be under fire in terms of up forward is McAdam, because he's lazy and he doesn't work hard enough.
There's no doubt, Mac.
Yep.
He's under the pump at the moment, McAdam.
Yeah, so he's the one that could really make way. Because I do like Cook. I think Cook is going to develop into a very good player over time. It might not be all this coming season, but in time he's going to be a very good player for us too, Cook. So McAdam is the one that I've got real big question marks on.
Yeah. So, looking at Josh, I mean, obviously, I think he could be anything. He could end up being a very, very good small to medium forward, or he could make his way into the midfield, I should say, and forge a career there after a couple of seasons. He's a good distributor. He knows where the ball is, and he knows where the goals are. So, is he the type of player that I envisage just taking at 6? Absolutely not. Am I disappointed to have him on our list? Absolutely not. I think that probably sums up how I feel about Josh Rochelle.
Well, you really summed it very well, because what else are we going to do? Because we're going to, we'll be going, I think, if we didn't take him, we'd be going, I believe, for lesser players, although they may be, well, that's just my opinion, I just think that the one thing that we had, look, if you go back to last year and look at the number of times he went to our forward 50 and didn't score, was huge.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why we need Josh Rochelle.
Well, we need ball carriers through the middle of the ground, Mac. I don't know whether you recall, but when we were doing the forward 50 analysis in the first half of the year, and the amount of times we were one possession short going into our forward 50 and as a consequence having shallow 50 entries, that's where a bloke like Josh Rochelle is gonna work out. And same with Braden Cook, I think, is just providing that extra option, so that we're not bombing in from centre, we're bombing in from just outside the 50, say 65 metres out. And so blokes that can provide that last possession in the chain before we try and hit a target are key, and that's Josh, I think. Josh will do that better than a Lachlan Murphy, I think.
Absolutely.
For that reason alone, maybe he gets a gig after he's found his feet. But look, a really good pick under the circumstances. It was weird with our pick 4/6, because we kind of ended up being caught in no man's land, didn't we? Just away from the obvious talent, and not quite there for the value pick. So I wouldn't have been unhappy with a Hobbs. I wouldn't have been unhappy with Port's first pick, actually. Sin, I thought he was pretty good as well. But under the circumstances, I think of the three of those, we've certainly got the most talented, I think, of those three.
Yes. Yeah, look, Hobbs would have been a very good pick in the sense of he's a mass ball getter in the middle, and his highlights are very, very good too. But he's not pacey. But having said that, he gets a heap of the ball. So I think that he would have been a worthy take. That's only one possibility. But then we would have had just one player of the same type of what we've already got. That's the problem there. And Sin, he's more of a half-back flanker really, and he'll end up playing probably more as a wingman than on a non-baller. And I think when you look at our wings with Seed and Dawson, I think we got the best wingman in the competition.
Peter?
Look, as I said, quite happy. I mean, I said on the show before the draft that I was quite keen on Isaiah Wanganeen-Miller, but in the
Yes.
end, perfectly happy with that pick in the end. And look, I think that you have to look at if you look at the way the game's going, Fina Macca, and the fact that 666, stand on the mark, all that stuff. The game is becoming a very, very quick ground level game, and I think if you look at our draft in a totality, I mean, I think that's where that's what they're looking at, to be honest.
Yeah. All right, Jake Saligo, who we took with our second pick, 179 centimetres. Although let's not forget that these lads are still 18. They might get another centimetre or two out of them before they stop growing. So around about the 180 mark, 80 kegs. So he's got a good size about him. Excellent work rate, as you mentioned before, Peter. Gets a lot of the balls, got good hands, and he's got a good kick, although a little bit errant at times. Now, Peter, you mentioned that you feel out of all of them, that he might be the one to slot in.
I think so. Just almost on the Sam Berry kind of principle. Just the fact that I think that based upon what I've had a look at, I mean, obviously since we drafted him, but he just looks to be the kid that I think is most likely to deal with a full AFL pre-season. Massive engine and kind of kid that, if you look at, put it this way, if you're looking for Sam Berry to take a step,
Yeah.
I think Saligo is the most likely to play the kind of role that we saw Sam playing last year, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So I think that if you look at particularly his last 2 or 3 games, I think he had like sort of one game where he had 10 tackles, another game where he has sort of 8 tackles. He's tough. He's very, very hard. And as Hamish said, pure footballer. And so I just think he's that kind of kid that looks like that he's got the engine and he's got the defensive game to be able to slot in to that kind of role that you need a kid to take up as they first come into the team.
Yep.
So that would be he would be my tip as the most likely of the new draftees to play round one.
Yeah, we've just got its highlights running on the screen at the moment, and in terms of size, he doesn't look out of place amongst his peers. He looks to me, if I was going to make a comparison, I'm thinking Sam Mitchell, ex-Hawthorn player, is who I'm seeing with Jake Saligo. Gritty, left footer predominantly, I think.
Yep.
Loves a tackle. Loves a tackle. Averaged 6.3 tackles last season in the NAB League, and 22 and a bit disposals. So I can see a Sam Mitchell, a cute general kind of player, as Jake's ceiling, as Jake's potential, I guess you could say. And gee whiz, you wouldn't mind a Sam Mitchell for 200 odd games. So if that's how I see him projecting, so hopefully he can deliver on that.
Yeah, I thought Pete subbed him up pretty well, actually. he is a bit of an animal. He does love a tackle. There's no doubt about that. And in that respect, he's a little bit Sam Berry like that.
Yeah.
They both love a tackle. So interesting thing too. The first two picks are country boys. He used to travel right from the country to come and play football every week, and he did win his NAB club's best and fairest. So
Yep.
he's obviously got talent. So I would, yeah, he well could play round one.
Very good. As I said, little bit left field, but certainly looks to have the package. And as a couple have mentioned on the chat too, projected at around about our pick in most dispatches prior to the draft. So not a surprise to go around about that place. Would we have taken him had Matty Roberts been available? I highly doubt it.
I think we would have taken Roberts.
Robbo was there. We were getting like you could see it, absolutely see it, and the fact that we were just sort of like scrambling a bit. I honestly thought that we thought that Robbo was coming through.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree. And am I disappointed? A touch, because I've said all along that I think Matty Roberts will play 200 quality games for someone. Pete, I know you're a big G for him. We both feel that he's slipped down the pecking order for reasons that weren't necessarily logical. I see him as a rangy left footer, not much dissimilar to Simon Goodwin, but we don't have Matt Roberts. We have Jake Saligo, and I think of the players around about there, I think that was as good a pick as any.
Yep, agreed.
The next one is Zach Taylor, and as you both have pointed out, possibly the steal of the draft. Pete?
Yeah, it's a funny one because in all of the mocks and all of the analysis that went through, you know, he was sort of around about that sort of 20 to 25 kind of pick or thereabouts, and you know, just watching his vision, he just looks a really, really classy footballer. So yeah, I think that they would have been, and clearly they got the sniff that he was going to be available, and so they jumped in and did some deals to make sure that they had the pick to be able to get him, because they didn't have that pick. But I think that once they had the sniff that they were going to be able to, that he was too good to resist. So there we go. And just you know, look, if you look at his vision, it's just his evasion through traffic that I like. He's an incredibly agile player, and another lefty, and just you know, uses the ball really, really well. But it's his evasion and his vision through traffic that was, I'm sure that, you know, the recruiters would have loved. And so yeah, he was an ideal pickup, Macca.
Yeah, look, he's an excellent two-sided player, and I think, you know, you described him very, very well. And the potential best deal in the draft. I think we're all agreeing about that, and I reckon he'll prove it too. He is regarded as one of the best kicks in the NAB, full stop, in that NAB competition. His highlights are effective, and I think you described very vividly there, Pete, how evasive he is. He's completely two-sided. He also won his best and fairest in his NAB team as well. So, yeah, I just think whether it's this year or next year, he's going to be a good player for us.
Yeah, from what I've seen of him, he's not necessarily an inside player. He plays probably more outside than inside, but he's that guy that you want to have that second possession out of a clearance or out of a stoppage. He's the guy that you want the ball in hand. And if you're thinking about who might have been that player this year for Adelaide, it would have been Paul Seedsman as being that last, you know, link in the handball chain out of a stoppage or out of a clearance. And I would suggest that we've got a similar type of player in Zach Taylor, with maybe a little bit more intent on contact. Doesn't mind a tackle, but gets a lot of inside 50s, gets a lot of the ball, so he knows where to put himself in traffic and in those transition chains, and seems to be able to use it better than most at his level. So a really good pickup as far as I'm concerned. I'm always a bit cautious when people say, "Oh, he was a steal at the level," because he wasn't talked about in the top 10 or whatever. So yes, he probably slipped a little bit lower than expected, but he certainly wasn't touted as a top 10 pick. So it does have some flaws.
Interesting. I think what's interesting for me is if you look at Saligo and Taylor, and I was reading, I can't remember where I saw it the other day, I was reading that both of these kids are a little bit nasty.
Yeah.
And I just think that my gut feel is that Matty Nix is, and I saw it a few times this year. I think he's trying to put together that really, really contested final style, game style. And
Yeah.
I saw it in the show. I saw it in the showdown and I remember I reported back. I sat up really, really high, and I watched how Nixie had everybody one on one. There was no zones. There was nothing like that. It was just a one on one, like brutal contested game. I feel like that's where Nixie's going. I feel like that's the player that he wants. And both Taylor and Saligo, a little bit nasty.
Well, and if you look at the picks last year as
They got
well,
a little bit. They've got a little bit about them, but just look out.
I think you could add Pedler and Berry to that mix, and I also think that Harry Schoenberg gets a little bit of white line as well. So, you're right, Peter. He does seem to be building that sort of a engine room. I don't mind it at all. It's all very well having Silk, and we do have a little bit of Silk in that mix, and we've got a couple of blokes like Miller who are yet to come back into that mix as well. But I like it too. And I always harken back to the last time we were really competitive, which was about, 2000 and... I don't know. Just in the middle of the Neil Craig run, where I remember commenting about it. It must have been about 2016, where we had about 8 or 9 blokes that could rotate through the middle. And it feels like he's building a similar squad where he's got a lot of midfield options, and I'd be very surprised if we saw the same stagnant 3 that we did in 21. Maybe not with this year's crop, but certainly with Schoenberg and Berry and Pedler as well. It seems to me that we're building a little bit of versatility through that midfield again, which is good to see.
Well, Nick has that. Sorry, Pete. No, Nick has actually stated that very point that you just made, that we have to build up the numbers that we can rotate through the middle. And so I think you're right. You did right there, Finn.
Just on that issue of being a little bit nasty, I did read something the other day in social media as well. There was a report that came back from a school football game in Melbourne this year, and there was a certain school team that was some young players were getting a bit beat up upon by another school, and there was one player that jumped in and flew the flag pretty aggressively, and that was one Josh Rochelle. So I think that he's another one that has just got a little bit about him. I think that I think that Nixie is looking for that kind of player.
Yeah, I think so. The good thing is that we've pretty much cleansed the list of players who we feel might have a little chink in their armour, and we've replaced them with lads that on the surface certainly seem to have a little bit more grit and resilience about them.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
I don't feel like we're building a list of downhill skiers. Just about every one of those players that we just rattled off a moment ago has a little bit of determination and mongrel about them. And then you add in blokes like Geordie Butts down back, and then Riley up forward, who also plays a bit angry.
Quite frankly, Shane, I don't want to be playing any practice games in the pre-season. I really don't.
I think it'll be a bit.
Would not be interested.
Yeah.
I'd just walk away.
Yeah. So, of course, the last one we need to talk about is one that came out of left field a little bit, and that is young Nankervis. I must admit, again, I don't know a lot about him. Mac?
He was actually when I looked through the Phantom drafts, and he was tipped to go around about the 50 mark in some of the Phantom drafts, and so obviously not a total pick out of the blue. But I think they've sat down at the end of the night and they've run through the players that are left over, and it's obviously they were pretty red hot on this particular player. And because when we started off, we only had 2 picks to start the night off, and we'd already done very, very well with what we did to end up with
absolutely
with what we did. And then they thought to themselves, well, we can't take the risk of anybody taking him in the rookie draft because there were 3 before us.
Yep.
And they've gone, which a very unusual technique, but a very clever one. They've gone in the PSD where they weren't going to be challenged and picked him up that way. And so they must have a very good opinion of him to put him straight onto the senior list when he could have been a rookie. And they did not want to have the chance of losing him. So what I see there is they think this is a lad with a lot of potential. And when you look at his hands are very good. His actually movement for a guy of his size is pretty good too.
His agility is off the charts, Macca.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And I have no doubt this is the boy they see long term becoming that big-bodied midfielder.
Yeah. He hasn't had a lot of development because he only came to the Sandy Dragons as a top-age player.
Yeah.
So I don't know what he was doing before then, but he only came to Sandy Dragons program as a top ager. Didn't play bottom age, under 18s, and train with them, I guess, given the COVID thing. But so he's only had the 1 season in the program, and so, but according to Hamish, they saw him in the first internal trial, and they've been tracking him ever since because he is just a very athletic, big high leap. Incredibly agile, so there's a lot of athletic stuff there. I think that's your classic kid that you want to sort of look at as a late pick because he's got all the athletic traits. They just need to teach him some football. So no, he was a very, very firm. Hamish was clear that there was one of the guys was retiring or moving on, one of the recruiters, and I think Hamish in his interview said that was the going away present because this guy desperately wanted Nankervis on our list.
Yeah, he plays and looks very loose, if you ask me. And I don't mean loose as in not checking. I mean he's very raw. His kicking style is very raw. He's obviously got good agility, but he doesn't look compact in his movement. He's all arms and legs, and his kicking style needs some tightening up to get some consistency. But he certainly has the attributes to work with. Certainly what I would talk about as a project player, I guess you'd say. You hate to put that label on a kid, but I think he's got some rough edges to smooth out, which he'll be able to do in the seconds. And I guess it'll be very interesting to watch him develop over the next 12 to 24 months.
Yep.
The good thing is, probably our best recruit for the year is Darren Burgess, and if ever these kids are going to get worked over and get up to AFL fitness in a hurry, it's going to be under Burjo's tutelage. So you'd imagine that these boys will at least get some sort of a tank in their first 12 months. I don't expect to see Nankervis this year. I don't expect to see much of Zach Taylor this year, to be perfectly honest.
No, you're probably correct there.
Particularly because we've got to get some games into Lukey Pedler, and we've got to keep chugging games into Harry and Sam Berry and the like. I do see Josh getting in, assuming there's no mishaps in the first quarter of the year. But a really good base, I think. And I'm just going to, if we can, if I just segue out of that with any last words from you guys before, if there's anyone on the Discord chat that does want to have a say, please by all means feel free to put up your hand. Give us your opinion on what you thought about the Crows' efforts during the draft. And while we're doing that, you guys talk away. I'm just going to bring up our list now. We can talk for a minute about our list profile, I think.
Well, my comments are that when we went into the the draft with pick 6 and pick 33. If you'd said to me we were going to walk away with 4 players on the main list, I wouldn't have thought that was possible. But I think that the drafting and trading team they've done an excellent job this year. And the one thing did irritate me was the fact of that trade with Melbourne being knocked back on the grounds of the fact that we were reusing a draft with them or something like that. And I've never heard of that ever being mentioned anywhere. And the one thing
that's always been a rule. You can't trade a pick that was traded to you.
Just a rule maker. So
is that right?
Yeah.
I knew you couldn't do it with a player.
They just forgot about it, I think.
So I knew you couldn't do it with a player, but I've never heard it said before about the pick.
No, you can't. You can't get a pick back that you've traded to someone else.
Okay. So I just wondered whether it was just the usual, smash Adelaide, because they do love doing it.
Just a rule. You know what, Fiend? I'm just going to sum up the draft like this. I like Matthew Nicks, and I like the players that Matthew Nicks likes.
Very well
That's
put.
it.
Very well put. Because I think Nicks is definitely heading the club in the right direction. There's a certain style of play and a certain style of player that he needs to fulfil that. And it did look like he had a reasonable amount of say in when I say he wouldn't have gone out there looking, but they would have said these are the options and we think such and such and such, and he would have vetted them that they meet the standards of what he required for the game plan that we're going to play. And I do like his game plan, because when we really get on board with it, I mean, we knocked off both teams that played in a grand final. So, I mean, it is the right game plan. It's just a matter of the players getting used to playing that game plan all the time, not deviating, which they did at times because of the fact it was new. And but this year, I would expect that we'll be more consistent with playing that game plan, and that I'm sort of tipping we might win somewhere between 8 to 10 games this year. I can see us doing that.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's just round off this discussion with a look at our list profile, which I've put up here for the people watching. And we'll start off with our midfield, and we've got 4 players with over 100 games experience: Sloaney, Laird, Seed, and Crouch. And then it falls away dramatically. Keys on 68, Harry on 30, Sam on 17, Jackson Haitley on 16. Hinge listed here as a midfielder, although I'd say he's more of a running defender. 4, Braden Cook 3, Luke Pedler 2, Jake Saligo, Luke Ninkervis, Josh Rochelle, Zach Taylor, all yet to get off the mark. So, we have got the makings of quite a well-rounded, if a little bit one-sized midfield. But there's still a lot of games to get into these kids.
Yeah, going back to the size thing though, I think it was 2019 that Richmond won the flag with 16 players under 183 centimetres.
Yes. And I think, as I said to you, or as I said at the outset, I think my initial reaction to the draft was a little simplistic, because I was a bit disappointed we didn't go for a more bigger-bodied mid. I still would have liked us to take one a little bit with a bit more size. If you have a look, here.
I think one thing I wanted to add tonight, Fiend, is that if you want to look at if you want to look at your list in a corporate sense, and you're trying to sort of build an asset base, if you're picking for talent, and if you're on and you back yourself and you've got the talent, then if you are surplus in a particular area or a particular size or whatever that may be, you then, I guess, then what you do is you build trade capital to look towards trading, something in at a later date, rather than sort of looking for a particular type which may not necessarily develop, and you may end up losing in terms of an asset acquisition. In a corporate speak, do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. Look, I 100% agree, and the club themselves, Hamish has said that this is the last year that we'll go heavy at the draft, and it's quite likely that in the next couple of years we'll be looking at trading and free agency. And I think you're spot on. I think what we've built is a squad that has got a lot of talent and versatility. Not all are going to make it, obviously, but I think that there will be scope for trades. And and I agree with you, Macro, I think we're 8 to 10 wins next year. And I think there's a bit of excitement building around Adelaide, and I think there'll be players that we'll target, I think, that will want to come and play for a rising team. So I think you're spot on. There's a couple of question marks here. Jackson Haitley is one. Jackson, 190 centimetres, 83 kilogram, said himself in the interview that we did with him at the beginning of the year, he saw himself as a big inside midfielder. We didn't see any of it, and lots of question marks over Jackson. The reports are that he was carrying a groin for the majority of the season, which obviously would hamper you. One has to wonder why he wasn't put out to pasture, but we're not medicos, so who knows. But Haitley needs to make every post a winner, in my opinion, this season.
Yeah, he's sort of under the hammer, isn't he? Because he wanted to come to Adelaide because he wasn't getting the opportunities in the mid as that big tall mid with the Giants, and as you say, he didn't show much when he did get an opportunity. But when you read the fact that he's got groin injuries, well, I just don't understand why they keep playing with it, because you just can't.
Yeah, I just noticed.
You just can't perform. The question I was going to throw at you, though, Fee, you were talking quite rightly about the fact that in future that we will be probably looking at opportunities to trade players in. And everybody's always talking about Lukosius and Rankin, and I know that you're not overly keen on bringing Lukosius in. And with our recruitment of Rochelle, is there any need to bring Rankin in? So,
no. No.
So,
put it this way. Not unless we're projecting Josh as a midfielder, in which case we still need that speedy small forward.
Macro, I think if I can just jump in, Macro, I think you have to look at what Matthew Nix is building down there, and the culture that he's building down there, and the style of player. And no one was a bigger G for me than with those two players. When they were drafted. But you have to ask yourself the question: after 3 years or 4 years on the Gold Coast, with the way that those two are cruising up there, how are they going to be? How are they going to fit into the kind of culture and the kind of squad that Matthew Nix is building? And are they Matthew Nix type players?
That's why I raised the question. Exactly, Pete.
It's an extremely good point, Peter. Extremely good point. I don't think Rankin profiles as that sort of player. Rankin would need to put in a pretty good season to convince me that he's worth chasing, and then all that does is push up his value to a point where you wonder whether he's worth the currency, because obviously having been a top pick in his draft year, a top 2 pick in his draft year, they'll want to get some of that back. At the moment they can't justify it with his form, but if he puts on a good stretch of form, they'll be asking for a first round pick, and I don't know whether I want to spend that on another short player.
Well, I'll need form. It's just say, for example, we were talking about trading him this year, at the end of this year. He was a second rounder at best on his form. A second rounder at best.
Well, right now he is.
Yeah, and it comes back to the point you were saying about whether if he played well next year, of course, then he'd raise his value again. But it's an interesting one, and whether you can't be locked in just to one or two players. So there must, and I'm sure that the club will be looking around further than those two. The one thing I do know is that the club was very, very wedded to Lukosius. And Lukosius' family was very wedded to the Crows. So whether that has got any bearing now after 3 years, it was always what I was told was the fact that he will ultimately come home and would like to come back to the Crows, but whether now it's a question of whether we really want to or whether we do need him.
Peter?
Oh, I just, with Isaac, I just reckon even now, I reckon if you put him in a 15-minute internal trial with Saligo on him, just to match up on him one-on-one, I reckon Rankin would he'd just walk off. I reckon he just wouldn't be bothered. I reckon Saligo would just drive him into the ground.
Yeah. Lukosius?
I just think with Dawson, I just similar kind of style players. For me, like Jack Lukosius, he's a key forward, and he's just been cruising on the wing and half back and kicking the ball out, and getting 1,000 metres gained because he runs 10 metres and kicks 60 metres, and that whole thing. And I think that he just has to, he needs to have a season where he actually goes to where he was projected back in his SNFL days for the Eagles, and that's as a key forward. And I think if he presents as a key forward, and I think if he actually makes it there, then yes, you'd absolutely have a look at him. But at the moment, he's just cruising, taking probably about 600 grand a year up at Gold Coast, playing on the wing and kicking the ball out, and probably surfing and having a good time. Well, I'm
100%.
sorry, but that's just how I see it.
100%. And again, once you get into that groove, Peter, it's hard to get out of it. And you go from an environment like that to an environment that seems to be building at Adelaide, where you've got to kick it up a notch. Don't know. I mean, we obviously have connections there. I'm sure he would love to be playing for the Crows. I wouldn't mind betting that we might see him around free agency time if we've got the room. But I don't see us trading for either of those two players anymore. Just looking at our defensive stocks real quick. Again, we've got a very good mix here now in defence. A couple of old stages in Brodie Smith and Luke Brown. Miller are there, obviously, who might project into the middle. We've got Tommy Duday, future captain. Chase, who's really cemented his spot down back. Lockie Scholl, who can play up on the wing. Will Hamill is a real concern with his concussions. Andy McPherson was a bit up and down. Second-year Blues, hopefully he kicks on. Geordie Butt's an absolute standout. Nick Murray, similar. Fisher Mackesy. Do we see him long-term as a forward or a defender?
I think they were pretty clear that they see him as a forward now, and they see Frampton as a defender. I think that's how it's going to go forward this year. I think Billy will be... and I saw a bit from, and that I'm not a fan of Billy Frampton, but I saw some signs from him that he could be a decent 200 centimetre, key defender with some, like if he actually works with the defenders this year and gets some coaching, and he might be all right.
Yep.
Well, that's his one and only chance, isn't it? Because every opportunity he's been given up forward, he's shown us that he's an average player up forward, and that's not what we really need.
He's not an average player up forward, Macca. He's a very, very good player up forward, just not at AFL level for some reason. And I think it's confidence with Billy Frampton. Because you watch him play forward for the SANFL, and he's a monster. He's a monster.
I agree with you.
And SNFL, he's playing defence, getting 30 touches.
Yeah.
As a 200 centimetre player. I mean, it could be anything, really.
I actually think he's got a problem with self-belief.
Whereas in the back line, of course, there isn't that same pressure on you. You've got two options there. You've got the option to spoil, or you've got the option to mark. Yeah. And whereas when you're up forward, you're expected to take the mark. And I think that Pete's right. Defence is his spot, and for the few games that he played there, he showed a lot. So if he plays there quite a bit, I think he could really develop into a good player there.
Ashoka on the chat says Frampton can't stay on his feet. And I think the three of us and probably a lot of people understand that blokes fall over when they are feeling pressure. That's when blokes go to ground, when they're feeling pressure. And I feel like that's symptomatic of Billy suffering from self-imposed pressure, if you ask me. Because, again, you watch him at SANFL level, he doesn't do it. He's a completely different player at SANFL level. So
imagine having a 200-centimetre key defender that can get 30 possessions a game.
Yeah, because he's quite agile.
It blows your mind,
size.
really.
Yep.
So you have to persevere with him there and give him a crack.
Well, and they have, which is good. Joshy Worrell's an interesting one. Only got the one game in. Looked a little bit under the level. Obviously, 195-centimetre defender is absolutely worth persevering with. And it'll be interesting to see how he goes. We've got Jimmy Borlase, of course, rookie or supplementary or whatever he was.
He looks all right, Borlase.
Yeah, I worry about his size. 192. He plays the game as if he's taller, Mac.
He definitely does.
So I wonder whether he's a bit of a tweener at this level.
One thing, he's a very determined player, and then I think he's got plenty of ability. His form was pretty good. I think he's a long-term chance. We've got many options in defence, Vane, many. But the one I would like to talk about is that one Pete mentioned, using him up forward, having abandoned him down back, which is what we drafted him for, is Mackesy.
Yeah.
Is he going to make a forward? That's the big question.
Well, he'll have to, Mac. If he doesn't, he'll go because he's not making. They're not playing. Like Reedy was very clear. He's been moved to the forwards. He's been training with the forwards.
Yep.
Right.
He's gone. If he doesn't make it, that he's out of the defence.
Right, Pete, and accepting everything you said is right.
Well, that's just coming from the club. That's from the club. That's from Reed.
Oh, I'm accepting it, and I'm saying, but whose spot does he take?
Well, I mean, it's Himmelberg and him really for a second key forward.
Yeah,
I suppose that would be it. Yep.
Well, it was Himmelberg and Frampton before, so just take Frampton out and put Mackesy in.
Yeah.
Mitchie Hinge.
Around.
Yeah, Mitchie Hinge I really like, and I really hope he can get his shoulder right because I think he could be quite damaging off half-back. He's got fantastic attack on the ball. He's very good in the air, and he's got a good kick. And he's a good size for that type of player. He would be an upgrade on Jake Kelly playing in a similar role if he can get right. So let's hope he can get right. And little Paddy Parnell, God knows what's gonna.
I like Paddy.
What's gonna happen there?
I love him.
Where would you play him, Pete?
Oh, you play him. I think Chase will probably eventually move up a little bit, and you play him in a back pocket, maybe up half back, because he just kicks the ball beautifully.
The club really rate him.
Well, he's
one
only
of the best
19.
kicks in the football I've seen.
He's still one of the youngest kids in the club at the club.
Yeah, I heard one.
He's
club,
he's one of those kids that Nixie just loves. He can just play football and he can just kick the footy.
Yeah, I
say.
heard one of the club officials talking about him. They were saying that overall they love him because they don't think this year will be his year. This year will be his year to get ready for playing next year.
Yeah, well, maybe.
Yeah, well, to take a player like Patrick Parnell in a mid-season draft when you're obviously not projecting to play him for 18 months, that's a big call. So
he came over, mid-season draft, straight out of junior football into the SANFL and had no trouble whatsoever finding the football at SANFL level. No trouble.
Yeah.
But after coming back to Hinge, I'm not sure how many minutes he actually played before he injured himself, but it was one of the most impressive.
Yeah, they were good minutes, weren't they?
Oh, outstanding. I thought, geez, we've got a player here. And I was so upset when he hurt his shoulder because, he's got a laser-like leg on him as well. And, and he has no problem finding the ball. No, if he can have a good season behind, fitness-wise, he'd be a regular, I think.
Yeah, I do like him. I've been a fan ever since he came over, and I really hope he can get that shoulder right. Forwards, interesting, and we touched on it already. Of course, we've got Tex. We'll be pushing 32 by the time we kick off next year. And obviously coming back after a bit of a cloud. The other tools, Darcy Fogarty, Elliot Himmelberg, Frampton's gone, Riley Thilthorpe, of course, looking to cement himself, at least at this stage, as our premier key forward, although I don't think that'll last forever. I think
I'm glad you raised that, Fee, because I think there's a whole lot of underselling of Riley going on here, and I think that you're right. I think that he'll be looking to establish himself early doors as a forward. But I'm going to make this statement, and I'm going to make this call, Macca and Fiend. Are you ready for it?
We're ready.
You ready?
Ready.
I reckon Riley will be the next, and one of the only, but he'll certainly be the next 200 centimetre player that will win a Brownlow medal. He'll move into the midfield. He won't be he'll drift forward occasionally, but he'll be a midfielder, and he will win a Brownlow medal. There you go. I've said it.
Pete, I've got given you a big tip. I agree with you.
Geez, we're not short of making Brownlow tips early on, are we? I've got my money on Harry. You've got yours on Riley. Look, I don't disagree with you, Peter. I think that the Crows, just with his attributes, will just want to have him more involved. He's too good a player to be sitting up forward waiting for the ball to be delivered to him. I think that's the bottom line. I think they want him around the contest as often as possible. Now, whether that be that he ends up being a ruckman, or whether, as you say, Pete, he ends up being just a massive midfield presence, who knows?
His ground play's as good as any midfielder.
Oh, it's fantastic. Oh, I know that. You don't have to convince me. It'll just be interesting to see how they play him. But I don't think Riley will spend his career playing as a key forward. With you on that.
He'll be wasted up there. He'll be wasted.
Well, I think that's already a clue given about that last year, because he was often running around in the centre wing area, etc. He'd start off at full forward, but he'd only be there for a few minutes, and then they just give him license to run around up around the midfield area. So I am with Peter. I think he's going to develop into an absolute champion, and I think he will spend time in the middle, and I think he is going to be good enough to win a Brownlow.
There you go.
Can I go now?
Well, you're pretty much, blown everything out of the water with that one. Look, right. We know he could be anything. By all reports, he's put on a bit of beef. We know what a competitive beast he is. We know how good he is around his ankles. He's probably, at this stage of his career, I would say he's better at his feet than above his head. And
that's a fair call.
And he will need to, as a forward, we need him to be taking a few marks. So he does need to develop that side of his game. How do we see things shaping up next season? Just to round off this look at the squad. Obviously, we've got Tex, we've got Darcy, Riley, and Himmelberg as the four. And Riley. Did I say Riley? Yeah, as the four keys.
Or Mackesy.
Or Mackesy. So, of those five players, what's the mix, do you think? Considering we're going to be probably looking at filling 3 spots with those 5 players.
Gee, I'll let Pete go first there.
I think Darcy will have the goal square.
Yeah,
as he has been. I think he's been developing really well in that role. I think there's a role for Elliot as that crash, that player that, as you you said before, Fiend, that kind of that Matthew Robin kind of player that they just kick in that direction, and he kind of just makes a contest and straightens you up a little bit. So I think there's a role for him there. I think Riley will drift sort of in and out. I think even next year he'll start drifting in and out a little bit, playing minutes up there. I guess you then have to look at whether there's room to fit someone like Fish up there. I guess it just you just have to see how he goes. But I think primarily Walker will come back. I guess so. Fisher and Walker probably seem to me to be that seems to be a position that they're contesting for. But I think that in terms of roles, you've got Darcy with the goal square, you've got Elliott sort of straightening them up, and then probably Fish/Walker providing that extra tool sort of leading out. Does that make sense?
Yep. Does Walker play a full season, Macca?
Depends on his form. If his form's good enough, he will. But
Well, he misses 6 to start off with, doesn't he? How many does he miss?
he's no, he has to. He's already missed 3. He's got another
Okay,
3.
this is 3. Okay, all right,
Yes,
so-
now, having said that, he is giving the others a start, and that's something you never want to do in AFL football. It's because if a player plays very well in that particular position, there's no reason to put Walker in if that player is doing very well. So he will come in at some stage. I have no doubt about that, and I think that he is working his ring off at the moment. No, he is running apparently like he's never run for years, and I think he will come back and play some pretty good footy. So, and I know that he wants to also play on next year. I don't know whether that will happen, but
Well, we've been saying that for the last 2 or 3 years, haven't we, with Tex?
Yep. But I think when he does come in, he'll be very good because he'll be as fit as he's ever been in his life. And I think I don't know that we'll ever have 3 tools on the ground at one time. We'll have 3 tools, but they may rotate off the bench. I think that going by the players that we'd be selecting, you can see there's going to be a lot of. I mean, Cook's probably, if he's on one half forward flank, and you've got Rochelle in there, you're probably going to have Rowe, and you're going to have what's his name, the little fellow McHenry, who came good last year. I think those guys will do very well, and I think that we will have a bit of a mosquito fleet around there with a couple of tools, and sometimes 3 tools, depending on who we're playing and how they're structured. So I think we've got versatility there.
Yeah, I'd like to see a lot more of Lockie Gallant next season. I just thought the game that he played just oozed potential.
He played well.
Oh, just some of the things he's got footy IQ. I hate using that cliche, but the couple of marks that he went for, the way he was able to get himself into position when he was completely out of position, just showed me he was a natural footballer. And I have a feeling he's going to be a very good player for us. I can see us running with 3 tools because I don't class Walker as a tool. He's a lead up. Darcy's a lead up. When you're talking about marking forwards, and we use the word loosely because we don't really have what I would say is a really strong marking forward, but in that category would be Himmelberg, Thilthorpe, and Mackesy if he plays up forward. So I think there's room for 2 marking forwards, a lead up or 2, and a bit of a mosquito fleet, not forgetting that we can utilise the bench to change the mix during the course of a game. So, but a big year for some of our forwards. It's a big year for Elliott Himmelberg. This season will make or break him, I think. You talk about blokes who's been on a list for a while. Berger's almost in the same category as Ben Davis in terms of the amount of opportunities that he's had.
Well, they drafted the same year, weren't they?
Yep, and less injuries. He's a taller player, so you're inclined to give him a little bit longer. But I think this is a massive year for Elliott Himmelberg. Shane McAdam, if he doesn't do something more than just try and take hangers and kick goals from the goal square, this will be his last season on an AFL list pending contract status, which I'm not sure what it is. So I think the wood is very heavily on Shane McAdam to deliver. And Lockie Murphy, I think, might be relegated to, sort of second tier, depending on how Josh Rochelle and 1 or 2 others. Let's not forget too, we've got blokes like Pedler and all the rest of it who've got to find a way into this team. And they'll traditionally start off the half forward line. So there's a few players in our forward line, and I felt like our forward line was probably not too bad last season, but just lacking something. And there's a few blokes there, I think, that are on their last legs, to be perfectly honest.
But there is another difference that will be in vogue next year is that we haven't had a bloke like Dawson bringing the ball in either. He's got a beautiful left leg, and he always finds a play with his kick. So um, yeah, the forwards, if they spread out and just give him the leads, he'll put it on their chest. So um, I think he's going to make a big difference the way our forward line plays, because they'll realise that if they go to the right spot, he'll give it to them.
If Geordie Dawson gets as much of the ball as Paul Seedsman got last season, we'll kick bloody 25 goals a game, and Tex will play until he's 45. Because the difference between Dawson and Seedsman is that Seedsman will give you a long ball and meet his gain, but Dawson will actually hit a target.
Oh, we can't underestimate how much he's going to add to our side. He is really good.
Well, look, final words. We've kind of touched on how we think we're going to go next year, but just to round it out, and given that this is our last wrap show for the year, I just need to thank everyone who supported us on the wrap show for 2021. Particular special thanks to Nikki, who was a stalwart on the show all season. So thank you very much to Nikki during the course of the year, and hopefully we have Nikki back next season again. Macca, of course, is the other stalwart on the wrap show. Mac, you and I, we go hammer and tongs sometimes, but I have the utmost respect for your knowledge and for your integrity as a person and the courage of your convictions. So thank you very much once again for being on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you.
I think we'd be letting the guys down if we didn't have an argument thing.
Well, it'd be pretty bloody boring, wouldn't it? Pete,
Yeah.
We're getting together on Tuesday night, so I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to blow smoke up your ass right now.
I'm about to go because my time is running out. I've heard about the Gab Fest that is Sunday Wrap, and now I've experienced it for myself.
That's
so
right.
I'm about to go.
Well, Pete, we'll wave you off at the 90-minute
Thanks,
mark. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on Tuesday. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Absolutely delightful to have you there, mate.
Cheers,
well
mate.
done.
Thanks,
Oh,
thanks,
don't-
Macca.
Don't get carried away. I mean, it was all right to have him. It wasn't
No,
delightful.
he's good. No, I like it. When he says something, it's pretty thought out and pretty
Absolutely.
meaningful.
No, it's been great to have Pete re-engaged this year, and his knowledge of the junior system, being involved with it at the moment, is great, and it's really added something extra to the CrowCast this year. But mainly, I want to thank everyone who's joined us on YouTube and joined our Discord channel. We've grown our Discord channel exponentially this year, and hopefully we'll continue to grow it over the course of next season. And also our YouTube channel, which started as a bit of an afterthought, Mac, back in the day, and has grown to biblical proportions. Nearly 400 bloody subs now. It's amazing.
That's great. I'm not really sure biblical is the right word for us.
No. But look, there'll be a lot more happening on YouTube next year. It's going to be a real focus for me and the CrowCast, so stay tuned for that. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We really want to get up over 1,000 subs so that we can offer our people who join us on YouTube a little bit more. And of course, the biggest thank you goes to the people that have supported us over the course of the year on Patreon with a little bit of coin, and I've just got them scrolling up on the screen at the moment, Mac. But I think they probably underestimate how much of an assistance it is, just a couple of dollars a month, just to help with the cost of hosting, the cost of putting this together. It's not as if it's terribly expensive to put this together, but it all adds up. And for those people to grace us with a couple of bucks a month is fantastic. They don't get a huge amount back, unfortunately, at the moment, although that's going to be changing. My offsider is going to come on board as a community manager next year, so we're going to have a dedicated community manager running Patreon and also some stuff on Discord, so there'll be plenty more activity on both of those channels. Now, JMac and Razer have been giving me shit about the mugs. They are coming. I actually lost them, but I found them again. I found them a week ago. I didn't know where I'd put them. But they'll be on their way, hopefully by Christmas, but if not, then shortly after that. So look, thank you to all our patrons on Patreon. If you do want to support us on Patreon, the details are there on screen, patreon.com/AFL CrowCast. There will be stuff going on, lots of little short videos on YouTube during the off-season, so we won't be as idle as we have been in previous pre-seasons. But for now, Macca, that's it for the weekend wrap for 2021, and it's been a pleasure. Obviously, we are back on Tuesday night for our final Tuesday Night Live. A couple of things. Now, I did mention a special guest tonight. Now, we weren't able to line that up because of his commitments during the the draft period. But I am hoping that we will have that person interviewed next week. The club have undertaken to allow me access next week. So we will put that up as a standalone pre-recorded video, hopefully sometime later next week. On Tuesday, Peter and I have been invited down to the club along with some other podcasters. I believe Project and also Nettie might be down there as well on Tuesday, and time willing, they're going to allow us to interview Tim Silvers as well. If that occurs, we'll get that up on Tuesday night as well, as part of the Tuesday night live show. So lots still to happen, Mac, but that's it from us at the weekend wrap. And for the final time this season, mate, I hope you're feeling better soon, and we'll bid everyone farewell.
Well, by the time the pre-season starts, I reckon I'll be just about running around myself. So,
Perfect.
Yeah, I've enjoyed the year, and as I've said to the guys out there in the chat, you know, I feed off them. They're great out there, and would be the same if they weren't there. So thanks, guys.
Awesome
and,
community.
Yeah, and it's a pleasure being here. So
Very good.
I hope to see you all next year.
All right, guys, from all of us here at the Weekend Wrap, we'll bid you good night and see you later.
Night all.